This is especially the case in Iraq. RAND has not been able to attribute a particular attack to a known jihadist group. Therefore, our study likely understates the extent of jihadist terrorism in Iraq and around the world. Our study yields one resounding finding: the rate of terrorist attacks around the world has increased because of Iraq, as we read earlier. But we do want to hear from you for this 15 minutes as we go through this article. Detroit Democrat, you are first up. We're talking about the Iraq War's effect on terrorism worldwide.
Yes. I'm a Korean War veteran, and I think they should be negotiating with Syria and Iran, and we should have never went to Iraq in the first place. And that's all I have to say. And I think President Bush is a warmonger. And I'm a first-time caller, and I really love C-SPAN. I've been watching it ever since 1990 when I retired. So thank you and have a nice day.
Fort Mill, South Carolina, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Hi.
I think the policy, put it in a nutshell, is like throwing gas on the fire. I think Iraq is now a touchstone for all sorts of, which would be disparate radical Muslim groups. This is similar to the strategy we used in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. That became a touchstone for all radicals throughout the Muslim world. Only we were backing them at that time. And also going back even further in history, if you think of the Greek city-states who were warring with each other until they had the Persian invasion, and that caused them to all come together to fight the larger threat. I think we're it's more of a problem than a solution, in my opinion.
Back to the Iraq effect in the upcoming Mother Jones. Mullah Dadullah, a key Taliban commander, gave an interview to Al Jazeera in 2006 in which he explained how the Iraq War has influenced the Taliban. Dadullah noted that we have give and take with the Mujahideen in Iraq. Hamid Mir, a Pakistani journalist who is writing bin Laden's biography, told us that young men traveled from the Afghan province of Khost to get on-the-job training in Iraq in 2004. They came back with lots of CDs which are full of military actions against U.S. troops in the Mosul, Fallujah, and Baghdad areas. I think suicide bombing was introduced in Afghanistan and Pakistan after local boys came back after spending some time in Iraq. I met a Taliban commander, Mullah Manan, last year in Zabul, who told me that he was trained in Iraq by Zarqawi along with many Pakistani tribals. Knightsville, Florida. Go ahead.
How you doing? My name is Raymond. I was just calling to make a comment on the... Yeah, I think it directly has something to do with it, because if anyone has studied the Muslim Quran, it strictly says that you can't get in bed with an infidel, and it's against their religion to even have anything to do with them. They're not going to fight alongside America, and that's why the whole war was stupid. But that's all I have to say.
Our survey shows that the Iraq conflict has motivated jihadists around the world to see their particular struggle as part of a wider global jihad fought on behalf of the Islamic Ummah, the global community of Muslim believers. Princeton, West Virginia, Republican.
Yes, hello, my name is Doris Sherman, and this is the first time I've ever called, but any time that America has tried to bring freedom and democracy to any country in the world, we have had this kind of feedback. If we were to close our borders and never enter into any other part of the world, we would constantly have countries that were like Sudan, Iraq, Afghanistan, that were just overpowering their own citizens with terrorist, terrible, inhumane treatment. We have no choice. God has just put us in a position that once we declared democracy and freedom for ourselves, when we broke away from England to have that freedom, we have no choice.
Attached to the article written by Paul Cruikshank and Peter Bergen is this fact sheet: Sunni, Shiite, Anyone? Anyone? It's compiled by Robert Dreyfus and Dave Gilson. And inside here are all sorts of facts and figures regarding the Iraq War particularly. Here are a couple, and this is federal spending on the Iraq War. In 2001 and 02, $2.5 billion was spent, $51 billion the next year, $77 billion by 04, $87 billion in 05, $100 billion in 06. So far, an official total of $318.5 billion. Over here, it talks about the U.S. Embassy and what that should cost and how big it is. The annual budget of the embassy in 1991 was $3.5 million. The amount requested to build the new embassy in Baghdad is $1.3 billion. Portion of the staff that speaks Arabic is 3% according to this, and number who are fluent, 6 total. And the number of acres of the Baghdad embassy complex is 104 acres. That compares to the Vatican at 109 acres and the Pentagon at 29 acres. Next call, Birmingham, Alabama. You're on the air.
Good morning, Peter.
Hey.
Good, I haven't talked to you since August. Have a question, Peter. I noticed that Prime Minister Blair said back in 24th of January that it would be ludicrous to pull out the troops from Afghanistan, Boston area. But no one has mentioned the fact that since Prince Harry said he wanted to go to the front line, all of a sudden Blair's advocating, pulling out the troops. What is the nexus there? Do you think the possibility of shedding that royal blood has something to do with it? All of a sudden, this epiphany that Mr. Blair's had on the troops?
Thanks for your thoughts. Back to this fact sheet, breaking the Army. Half of American soldiers think we are likely to succeed in Iraq. More than 1/3 say we shouldn't have invaded in the first place. It costs $275,000 to deploy a soldier in Iraq for a year. It costs $5,840 to feed him. Army doctrine recommends deploying 20 soldiers for every 1,000 residents of an area with insurgents in it. Baghdad, a city of 6 million, would require 120,000 troops. 20,000 are there now. Nearly 1/3 of the troops deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan have served multiple tours. Huntsville, Texas, Republican.
Hello, hi.
Hi. Go ahead, Huntsville.
Okay, first, I just wanted to make a comment. And as far as the United States and different senators and congressmen saying that Iraq is the central war on terrorism, we need not let the Iraqis and different people dictate to us where the front is. We need to bring the fight to those people. If they tell us, hey, you come fight us here, they're basically telling us to come to our land where we can take you out. We need to go wherever they are systematically and eliminate them. Plain and simple. Thank you. Have a nice day.
A few more facts. Iraq's newest export, refugees. 1.6 million Iraqis have been displaced within the country. As many as 1.8 million have left Iraq, with 3,000 fleeing daily. Saudi Arabia is building a 560-mile border fence to keep them out. As many as 700,000 Iraqi refugees now live in Jordan. More than 60,000 live in Sweden. Only 202 were admitted to the U.S. last year. Iraq, before and after, in 06, 30% of Iraqi children went to school. Before the war, attendance was nearly 100%. 40% of Iraqi professionals have fled, including 1/3 of all doctors. 2,000 doctors have been murdered since 03, and the number of Iraqis in jail or prison is up 30% since the fall of Saddam Hussein. All of this information is available at cspan.org in this article in case you would like to go read it for yourself. Lacombe, Michigan, you're on the air, independent.
Yes. I want to comment on when Congress voted to go to Iraq, it was to help the Iraqi people. And now that we're there, and we've lost close to 3,000 soldiers, and it's cost us a lot of money. Now that the people of this country, not just this country, but the people that voted to go there, they want to get out because of that reason alone. That does not help the Iraqi people. When you mention democracy, that's got to be stuck in the craw of all Muslims, because that makes it look like democracy is not working for us. We want to get out. When the going gets tough, we want to get out. We don't want to finish what we started. This was the product of our Congress people that we voted for. I want to know what the ambassador thinks of the word democracy. It's got to be something that they don't want in Iraq. They want something there, but democracy is not it. Thank you.
We'll let those comments stand. Norwood, Illinois, Republican.
Yes, good morning. I just have to say that the United Nations voted 17 resolutions for Saddam Hussein to either disclose or give up all his weapons of mass destruction. He kept lying and lying and lying. The whole world thought he had them, and now all of a sudden, that we did finally invade them to find out we're the bad guys. So if that's the case, then the United Nations needs to go bye-bye, because we're doing the work for the United Nations, and the whole world is against us on it. So the United Nations needs to go bye-bye. Have a good day.
Economists have estimated each life lost in the war to be worth around $6 million. The reality on the ground is much different. If the victim is a U.S. Army private killed in action, leaving spouse and 3 children, the compensation paid to the family is $500,000 plus $40,000 annually. That's from the U.S. government. $102,000 is paid by the U.S. government for an American defense contractor killed on the job. A Nepalese laborer working for Halliburton killed by insurgents. The Nepalese government pays the family $14,000. An Iraqi civilian tortured and killed in British custody gets paid $3,000 to the family by the British government. An Iraqi soldier killed in action, $2,500 gets paid by the Iraqi government to the family. And an Iraqi family killed by an American missile, up to $2,500 per person is paid to the family by the U.S. government. Miami, Democrat, you're on the air.
Yes, William Albertson, first-time caller. We spend a lot of money on wars, and it's my understanding that we're being attacked by those same entities that Saddam was destroying. The same people Saddam was killing, we're killing. Now, if we take $1 from every $10 that we spend on the war in Iraq to correct the situation, whereas we in our own country are unable to correct, which is racism, and put that towards education in this country, I think the rest of the world would see us as having a positive effect as far as cleaning up our own circumstance, and could more appreciate what we're trying to do to assist them. And that's all I have to say, and I thank you so much for your time.
In the Iraq Effect, Peter Bergen and Paul Cruikshank write that the most direct test of the Iraq Effect, whether the U.S. and its allies have suffered more jihadist terrorism after the invasion than before, shows that the rate of jihadist attacks on Western interests and citizens around the world outside of Iraq and Afghanistan has risen by a quarter, from 7.2 to 9 a year, while the yearly fatality rate in the attacks has increased 4% from 191 to 198. And from the fact sheet that's associated with this article, down the drain, corruption costs Iraq $4 billion annually. $8.8 billion the U.S. gave the Iraqi government cannot be fully accounted for. More than 20% of the government's Ministry of Interior staff are ghost employees, non-existent workers who collect paychecks. As much as 30% of Iraq's refined oil ends up on the black market or is illegally taken out of the country. The U.S. government says the insurgency raises $25 to $100 million a year smuggling oil. $9 billion in oil revenues has been lost, almost as much as Saddam Hussein stole from the UN Oil for Food program over 5 years. Irwin, Pennsylvania.
It just is amazing to me over the 10 years or so that I've watched C-SPAN, how much C-SPAN has changed. I always felt that it was a very balanced program, but I don't see it that way anymore. I see it very much almost anti-American. And as I watch it, it makes me sad. Thank you.
Next call, Hershey, Pennsylvania. You're on the air, independent.
Good morning, Peter. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay. Just a couple of comments quick. The Iraq effect on terrorism. Wasn't there a study, and I think you folks aired it with Robert Pope from, I believe, the University of Pittsburgh, showing that only 10% of suicide bombings could be accounted for directly related to political action vis-a-vis, let me try to get my thoughts straight, an aggressor, let's put that. I thought 90% or more could be attributed to someone occupying holy land. Now, my main point of calling was in response to a lady who was putting forth the idea that America has this special place in God's plan for spreading freedom and democracy. And right before the Iraq Study Group released their report, James Baker was being interviewed by Terry Gross on Fresh Air, and he let drop what I thought was a significant comment, and he said, I paraphrase, that, Terry, the United States has always reserved the right to intervene in a country when we felt our access to resources were threatened. And I think that I'm just going to encourage people to try to listen to both sides of the spectrum here, try to get as much information as they can before coming to some sort of conclusions. The idea that we're trying to spread freedom and democracy, I believe, was more of an afterthought or a gloss on our real motives to basically maintain our position within the world. Thank you very much.
Peter Bergen writes about the Robert Pape study in The Iraq Effect. This is what he writes. This challenges some existing conceptions of the motivations behind suicide attacks. In 2005, University of Chicago political scientist Robert Pape published a much commented upon study of suicide bombing, Dying to Win, in which he used a mass of data about previous suicide bombing campaigns to argue that they principally occurred to compel modern democracies to withdraw military forces from territory that the terrorists considered to be their homeland. Of course, terrorism directed against totalitarian regimes rarely occurs because such regimes are police states and are unresponsive to public opinion. Pape also argued that while religion might aggravate campaigns of suicide terrorism, such campaigns had also been undertaken by secular groups, most notably the Sri Lankan Tamil Tigers, whose most spectacular success was the assassination of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi by a female suicide attacker in '91. Pape's findings may explain the actions and motivations of terrorist groups in countries such as Sri Lanka, but his principal claim that campaigns of suicide terrorism are generally nationalist struggles to liberate occupied lands that have little to do with religious beliefs does not survive contact with the reality of what is going on today in Iraq. Memphis, Tennessee, Republican, go ahead.
Morning, Peter. Morning, C-SPAN audience. Peter, I have a comment. The way I'm looking at things now in reference to Iraq, Afghanistan, and the war on terror in general, either the United States is half-hearted in its efforts to fight, or it's not. We take the gloves off. We should just go in and destroy and let the military do their job, which they're capable of doing. Or we just get completely and totally all the way out. To me, it's either get all the way out, come home, or we destroy them and let us do what we have to do to take care of our business so we can end this threat to the world and us. Thank you.
We're talking about the Iraq effect and its effect on terrorism. We're basing it on the Mother Jones piece coming up in the next issue called The Iraq Effect by Paul Cruikshank and Peter Bergen. Next call comes from Honolulu. You're on the air.
Yeah, Peter, I'm Democrat, and I was against this war from the beginning, but then after everybody down there in Congress voted for it, I said, okay, Congress voted for it, and then they go in there, and now I'm hearing all these congressmen, congresswomen saying that we can't win it, and I just go back to after Vietnam. I remember they had a discussion where it was a lot of the people who were involved there, and General Giap from North Vietnam was in the panel, and when they came to him, they asked him about the war, and he said, hey, I only know one thing about war, and that's that it has to be won. And I'm getting really mad at when I watch these people down there in Congress voting. I don't know what they're voting for, but they keep saying it's non-binding. And if they have such high regards for themselves and their opinions on this war, then they ought to have enough nerve, okay, to go in there and vote to cut off the funds and bring our troops home. Otherwise, then if you're not going to do that, then back this surge and let the reinforcements go over there and help out our men and women who are there. And like General Japp said, those people down in Congress ought to abide by what he says. And if you get into a war, if you vote for a war, all right, you got to win the war and you got to support the troops. And I don't think by making these kind of dumb resolutions down there in Congress that are non-binding, that is in any way supporting our troops.
Thank you, caller. The globalization of jihad and martyrdom, accelerated to a significant degree by the Iraq War, has some disquieting implications for American security in the future. First, it has energized jihadist groups generally. Second, not all foreign fighters attracted to Iraq will die there. In fact, there is evidence that some jihadists are already leaving Iraq to operate elsewhere. Saudi Arabia has made a number of arrests of fighters coming back from Iraq, and Jordanian intelligence sources say that 300 fighters have returned to Jordan from Iraq. As far away as Belgium, authorities have indicated that Yunus Lakili, an alleged member of a cell that recruited Muriel Dagok, had previously traveled to fight in Iraq, where he lost his leg. Again, attached to this is a fact sheet. Iraq 101 from Alawi to Zarqawi and it goes through and it talks about who the Shiites are, who the Sunnis are, who the Kurds are. Has a map down here showing where Shiites and Sunni and Kurds all live throughout the Middle East. And over here is a fact sheet. They call it Players, Haters, Iraqi Politics at a Glance is what it's called. And down here it talks about Islamic Dawa, one of the groups in the United Iraqi Alliance. Dawa is the party of current Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. It was founded in 1957 by Shiite Ayatollahs as a counterforce to the Communist and Ba'ath parties. Dawa later won support from Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini, formed a terrorist branch, and in 1983 bombed the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait. Today it is led by Islamist scholars, and a name that you've probably heard over the years is Ayatollah Sistani. It says here that he's a crusty old cleric whose Delphic pronouncements are received as gospel by his followers. Sistani almost never leaves his house and has spurned U.S. officials' pleas for a meeting. His once supreme influence is declining in favor of the Shiite militias, but he did help put together the United Iraqi Alliance bloc, by far the biggest of the multi-party coalitions that dominates Iraq's parliament. We will be right back with Peter Bergen to continue this discussion.
Wednesday, beginning live at 3 p.m. Eastern, the first 2008 Democratic Presidential Candidates Forum from Carson City, Nevada, moderated by George Stephanopoulos of ABC News and a panel of 8 candidates, including former Senator Mike Gravel, Senator Chris Dodd, Senator Joe Biden, former Governor Tom Vilsack, Representative Dennis Kucinich, Governor Bill Richardson, Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton, and former Senator John Edwards. That's Wednesday, the first 2008 Democratic Presidential Candidates Forum, live from Carson City, Nevada, beginning at 3 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN.
We can join together in a spirit of bipartisan unity for causes greater than self and greater than political party.
President's Week on C-SPAN 2, State of the State addresses, tonight at 8 Eastern and continuing through Friday. 38 governors delivered their State of the States. Tonight includes Virginia Governor Tim Kaine, Texas Governor Rick Perry, and Missouri Governor Matt Blunt. State of the States, tonight on C-SPAN 2.